Wake up! It's the Sleep Unplugged podcast, episode 196, Red Light Therapy. All I see is red. Welcome, everyone, to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. My name is Chris Winter. I'm a neurologist, sleep specialist, and your host for this episode of the podcast. If you're new to the Sleep Unplugged podcast family, welcome. If you're a veteran, welcome back. We are glad you're here. If you want to get in touch with the show, let us know what you think, ideas for future podcasts, who you had winning the second annual Sleep Unplugged pillow fight. Let us know. Dr. Chris Winter Twitter, Dr. Chris Winter Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter Blue Sky Threads. We have a dedicated YouTube page for the podcast. We also have a dedicated web page for the podcast. That's sleepunplug.com, where we have last year's bracket and this year's bracket for the Sleep Unplugged podcast. And a big congratulations. Here are all the brackets. Brackets. We have brackets everywhere in this house. The only thing we have more of than pillows right now are brackets. And one special thing we have in the house right now, of course, if you're looking on the YouTube page, is the massive Side Sleeper Z Sleep Unplugged Pillow Fight Tournament trophy, which has been awarded to Pluto Pillow. Congratulations. It was a showdown between Pluto and Hastings in the final, with Pluto pulling it out. So we will be adding Pluto to the base of the trophy, and when I get that engraved and put on there, I will post a picture and let you see it. Thank you to all of the pillows that participated. It was really close, and as we said, it's all in fun. There were some people who said, "Listen, there is not a pillow in this bracket better than the Lynn Cove. Why would you ever want a foam pillow when you could have this sort of luxury?" The Authenticity 50 pillow was all, it came down when it was versus the Vice Spring wool pillow. A lot of people like the Authenticity 50 pillow. It came down to the tiebreaker of social media popularity to break that tie. Once again, Coop, their Eden pillow, had a strong showing. Chamberlain down. I had several people trying to steal that pillow from my home. The Scrumptious Honeydew, another really strong contender. It's just one after the other. So there are no winners or losers really in the pillow fight. It's about listening to last week's episode, figuring out which one speaks to you, going out and buying it. So we're happy about that. This week we're talking about light therapy, and our good friends at AO know that even though we're talking mainly about red light in this episode, that the primary function of their glasses, which I'm wearing right now, which they've come out with in a really cool black color. So this is the AO limited carbon edition. And as you can see, I chose to wear my biggest glasses to show that you can wear it with a pair of glasses. That their technology primarily rests on blue light therapy, which is designed to help circadian rhythm, circadian health, increase your energy, improve natural sleep. And this remains the function of their product. More recently, they introduced a red light into the wearable. And if you look on the YouTube, you can see two little red lights here and here that are shining into my eyes right now, because there is some research that we'll touch upon in this episode showing that red light around 670 nanometers might be helpful in supporting ocular health by improving blood flow to the optic nerve, reducing oxidative stress, and promoting well-being of retinal ganglion cells. Those are the cells that are actually picking up light signals, sending them back to the suprachiasmatic nucleus and the pineal gland to really regulate circadian rhythms and melatonin secretion. So that's why they decided to add it to their product. When you get the product and close it and you turn it on, it starts off as blue light, which you can't see because I have it set to red. But with the app, you can adjust it to whatever light you want. When you close it down, it turns off. easy to recharge. You can literally just plug in a little C-type cord right there, and it's ready for use. A lot of advanced users of the AO's previous models wanted more flexibility in terms of light therapy. So they've now introduced biohacker mode into their device, which allows users to try and fine tune both the blue and red light settings according to their preferences and expert guidance. For example, many users report that they enjoy using the blue light in the morning, which makes sense, to support that circadian rhythm, that start to your day, particularly in darker places or if you have to get up early. When I was getting up early to go see some of these teams, I was using the AO to help me wake up a little bit in the morning. And then the red light therapy at night is part of their wind down routine at low intensity. AO is among the pioneers in circadian light technology, combining light therapy and chronobiology through the AO app. They're proud to have over 100,000 users worldwide, including top athletes like Novak Djokovic, LeBron James, organizations like the U.S. Air Force and Special Operations, UK Royal Navy, and researchers at institutes like Oxford, U.S. Department of Defense, Qantas Airlines, who use AO on studies in light and human performance. So we're really appreciative to them. For our listeners, if you buy the AO product and type in Sleep Unplugged, you get 10% off. We get nothing. They are sponsoring this episode of the podcast, but your purchasing of their product does not go into the pockets of old Dr. Winter. So just wanting to make sure we're clear on that. Also wanted to give a shout out to Jazz Band by DNA Vibe. Also want to give a shout out to Everything Branding. I wanted to use a more traditional red light device for the episode of this podcast. Um, just personally. And also, my partner, my wife, was having some difficulty with plantar fasciitis, and I wanted something that she could try on it because I think that the evidence about tissue improvement and regeneration is a little bit less robust. And so I wanted to talk about all those things. So this is a two-mode wearable band for gentle regenerative support. It accompanies you wherever you go. It helps reduce everyday aches and stiffness, supports circulation and tissue health. Great for general wellness, stress relief, and maintenance. Features two optimized modes, red light and near infrared. It also has this nice vibrational therapy, which I really like. Retails for $159. So we'll give a big shout out to Jazz Band by DNA Vibe for letting us try out their product. So, what if the more interesting stories in modern wellness wasn't really about drugs or supplements we've talked about in the show before, not surgery, but mainly more about light? And we know light has lots of positives. Spend too much time on the beach, it has lots of negatives too. Skin cancer, I live in Florida now, so I'm always wearing hats and trying to cover my skin, but still have to get things burned off my body from time to time. But looking at research now about dim specific red light, typically around 630 to 670 nanometers, there is research stating that there's a potential for that light to influence mitochondrial function, reduce inflammation, maybe speed up healing and skin aging and even retinal health. This is the world of photobiomodulation, sometimes abbreviated as PBM. I want to talk about that, especially if you all saw the Harry Styles Saturday Night Live Ma Hospital. It was a takeoff on the pit. Great scene where a guy is crashing and they're like working on him. You can't really see the patient, but the ER doctors are working on him. And one of them says, "Clear, everybody stand back." And they stand back and then they pan out and they've put one of the red light masks on this patient who's crashing. And the guy's like, "Well, what's going on here?" It is so good. And a real reminder that evidence-based scientific medicine is real and it works and it saves lives, particularly relevant in surgical ORs and ERs around the world. We didn't just stumble upon these things. There was a great scene in the pit where an individual gets their leg amputated. The surgeon comes down and says, "This is a pretty clean break. We can put it back on." We can put it back on. Now, maybe they will be successful, maybe they won't be, but it's not out of the question given an total amputation that modern science can deal with the infection, can deal with the anastomosis and putting these vascular, it's just amazing to me. So I appreciated that episode on SNL and thought the red light mask was great. So we want to be as evidence based as we can here. A lot of people would say, look, what's the harm? You're putting a red light on, it costs you 150, 200, 300, $400, whatever. What's the harm? And there is no harm, but I think we have to be very transparent about what the science says here about these things. So I want to focus on red light therapy specifically. We've talked about blue light before, how there is a body of evidence that blue light before you go to bed may make it difficult to fall asleep, might make the quality of your sleep less than ideal. And that's become a bit questioned of late. How bad or dangerous is that blue light therapy? And that's what we talked about in episode 141 of the podcast. I really wanted to look specifically at red light therapy because the skin world has commercial devices for this everywhere. The recovery world has wrapped itself in wearable LEDs. The ophthalmology literature is now full of studies asking whether carefully dosed red or near infrared light can help with an aging retina, help with drying out macular degeneration, diabetic retinal injury, or again, injury to the retinal ganglion cells, which are extremely important for our circadian rhythm. Lose those, and you lose that interface between light and our environment and our circadian rhythm. So really important. One important caveat right up front, if you're looking at a wearable consumer device, like what we were talking about, the DNA Vive Jazz Band, the company says its red light runs roughly 650 to 675 with near infrared light at 825 to 850. That puts you in the general PBM neighborhood, but may not necessarily be the same thing depending on what device you've gotten. So that's something that I think that we have to sort of reckon with here is the red light in your sauna, the red light in your personal device or your mask. What is that red light? All red light is not equal. And while the red light you've got might differ from what's in the research study, the only thing we can comment on with any intelligence is the study. So maybe your red light would work just as well, even though it's not in that range in the study. But we want to try to stick with some of the science here. So let's build this out carefully. Photomodulation is based on the idea that low intensity red to near infrared light is absorbed by these intracellular photoreceptors, with cytochrome C oxidase often cited as the major one. And this can alter mitochondrial signaling. ATP production. So when we talk about energy metabolism, you eat food. The food eventually winds its way down to the mitochondria where it is consumed as ATP. The byproduct of that is adenosine. What does adenosine build up in our brain do? It tends to make us want to sleep. So all of this is quite interconnected. The strongest consumer facing red light story right now is probably related to skin. 2025 multi-center study. It was randomized, double-blind, sham-controlled. It was titled "Clinical Study to Evaluate the Efficacy and Safety of Home Use LED and IRED Masks for Crow's Feet." This study found that 630 nanometer and 850 nanometer LED mask treatment was effective, safe, well tolerated, and painless for facial rejuvenation. There was another paper, Reverse Skin Aging Signs by Red Light Photomodulation. It used a 630, I think it was plus or minus 10 nanometer LED mask and reported improvements in a range of skin aging markers over a period of use of about 3 months. There was an older controlled trial with a very long, egregiously long title called "A Controlled Trial to Determine the Efficacy of Red and Near Infrared Light Treatment in Patient Satisfaction Reduction of Fine Lines, Wrinkles, Skin Roughness, and Intradermal Collagen Density Increase." So these studies really help set the stage for the idea that non-thermal red. So some people go to get like kind of red laser therapy, which we're talking about non-thermal red and near infrared treatment can produce measurable skin changes over probably a longer period of time. So if somebody said red light for skin has some evidence, I think that's a fair statement. I know the producer of this show went on a dive into this research and came up with the same thing. In fact, Maeve was one of the people who said, "Hey, why don't you, instead of the blue light interfering with sleep, is that real? Is that not real? Just focus entirely on the red light because I do think there's some evidence here." But to me, the eye story, and again, I am a neurologist by training. I am not a ophthalmologist, nor am I a neuro-ophthalmologist. So take this for what it's worth. But I think the eye story is more intriguing because the retina is a metabolically ravenous tissue. It uses a ton of energy, as you might expect. It's kind of like the brain in that situation. And it's really, really vulnerable to oxidative stress. So aging retinas can show declining mitochondrial performance. And that makes this PBM conceptually attractive. This idea that we can use photobiomodulation in ophthalmology has precedent. There is a study, a review study called Photobiomodulation Use in Ophthalmology, an overview of translational research from bench to bedside. What they mean is bench in the lab. Let's bring it to your bedside in your own home. So, the field is built on non thermal lights, mitochondrial signaling, and a growing mix of animal and human data. So, one of the most talked about human studies was one called Week Long Improved Color Contrast. Everybody talks about this study. Week long improved color contrast sensitivity after single 670 nanometer exposures associated with enhanced mitochondrial function. In this paper, a single 3 minute 670 nanometer morning light exposure in adults aged 40 to 70 or somewhere in that range. It significantly improved cone mediated color contrast sensitivity for about a week. 3 hours one morning, 3 minutes one morning, improvement for about a week with timing mattering. And this is fascinating because it suggests that not just dose specificity, but time of day specificity matters. In other words, not just shine a red light whenever. This biology might be more clock sensitive than the wellness market wants to admit, meaning this has to be dosed at a specific time. Now, you're talking to a sleep specialist who believes in the circadian rhythm. Do I believe in beef tallow and bull semen as they were talking about at Ma Hospital? Not really. Energy crystals? No. But do I believe in things having a timing that matters in the body? Absolutely. So this doesn't strike me as being unusual at all. So it might be a timing issue as to when this red light is going to be at its best. At the same time, other studies have been more positive, especially with multi-wavelength systems rather than this just purely the 670 nanometer alone. A 2026 study that was just published called Long-Term Efficacy and Safety of Photobiomodulation in Dry Age-Related Macular Degeneration. This was the Light Sight 3 trials, a 24-month analysis reported the trial met its primary efficacy endpoint with a 6.2 letter gain at month 21, fewer progressing to geographic atrophy by 24 months, and no signs of phototoxicity. This is a big headline result. It did use what's called the Valeda system, which has 590, 660, and 850 nanometers, so not just that 670 nanometer range. So when people compress all this into red light helps macular degeneration, they're flattening an important distinction between wavelength specific studies and multi wavelength device trials. We have to be very careful. We're at the early stages of this. Which wavelengths work, which don't, which one works better? Is combination therapy something we need to be looking at? I don't think we have quite the answers to this right now. Now we bring to the reality check of this 2024 study, systematic review and meta-analysis entitled Photobiomodulation, Efficacy in Age-Related Macular Degeneration, a systemic review and meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials, concluded that the current evidence base has big limitations. Small sample sizes are small, which is always a problem. And it was a problem in the sleep unplugged pillow fight, right? I didn't have thousands of people trying out these pillows. I had about 100, right? How many people can I get through my house to come to a party? Somewhere on the order of how many people are laying a hand on the pillow. we're in the tens of people, let's put it that way. And so, if we were to do tens of other people, then maybe there would be a different result. And the Lynn Cove pillow would come out on top, or the scrumptious would arrive, those kinds of things. So it's the same kind of thing. We have to be very careful with these sort of small uh, uh, sample sizes. There's also a 2024 sham controlled study, safety, tolerability, and short term efficacy of low light therapy for dry age macular degeneration using a device with 500 nanometer, 630 nanometer, good compliance, mild ocular adverse events are only in a minority of people, short term functional and anatomic results favoring treatment, but again, not a final word here. So, very excited about this kind of research when it comes to skin, when it comes to the retina. I did want to touch upon very quickly retinal ganglial cells and neuroprotection. The study low intensity far red light inhibits early lesions in diabetic retinopathy. This was using a 670 nanometer light, improved retinal markers. There have been other animal models looking at reduced oxidative stress, mitochondrial performance, glaucoma, and retinal injury, all very, very important. So, big picture here, mechanistically, these are very easy studies to do. Human signals are intriguing here at first. Closing thought, when we think about this, is in short, I think that this is very promising and could really hold some benefit for individuals struggling with these disorders that don't have a lot of great treatments. I did want to just touch upon some research I also did on what about red light therapy for musculoskeletal pain and other types of injuries. My wife was dealing with some plantar fasciitis at the time when we got this jazz DNA uh, jazz the jazz band by DNA Vibe. So I was like, why don't you put this thing on your foot every night while we're watching TV and let it go through a little session? So it was red light, near infrared, vibrational therapy. I think it was even like magnetic therapy happening there too, whatever that means. So I'm not commenting on magnetic therapy today and don't have a lot of real positives about that in general. So the short answer is there is some evidence for musculoskeletal pain and injuries being improved by red light therapy, but it's modest, incredibly protocol driven, and not nearly as compelling as most marketing would suggest. Red light therapy has been studied far more in pain and tendon injury and soft tissue disorders than in the retina. And what the literature says is much broader, much more messier. Again, it's probably going through the same mechanism: ATP production, reducing oxidative stress, and modulating inflammatory cytokines. Maybe there's some increased ability for this light to increase fibroblast activity and collagen synthesis, although I think this is largely speculative at this time. Plantar fasciitis specific data, there existed some low level laser therapy for plantar fasciitis, a systemic review and meta-analysis, reduction in pain scores compared to placebo, some improvement in function, effects often comparable to ultrasound or stretching programs, but we're also talking about red light laser therapy, not red light therapy that we're talking about. So the takeaway with this is it might help in addition to your stretching protocols and loading programs that you're using. But I think the evidence about tissue injury is not nearly as good as it might be with youthful skin and fixing your eyesight. And like I said, I always tell people it's much better to look good than it is to feel good. So this is great. We've got much better evidence that's saying this is keeping you looking youthful, even though you can't put full weight on your left foot because it feels like a nail is being driven into your heel. So that's it. I just wanted to talk about the red light therapy and what's kind of out there. I think when it comes to safety profile, minimal side effects, especially when we're talking about non-thermal red light. But these effect sides do tend to be modest, and they're definitely not a miracle fix. Use it along with your other therapies and your what your physical therapist is doing. And before we jump out of here, I did skip over the most important part of the podcast, which is the title. Red light therapy, all I see is red. All I see is red is from Tunnel Vision, the Lenny Kravitz song off of his 1995 fourth album, Circus. Lenny Kravitz never got any great reviews of his albums, but I really like his music. I mean, I was a fan, 89, Let Love Rule, and then Mama Said. And then he had his massive, kind of breakout with Are You Gonna Go My Way in 93. Circus was kind of a dip, but has some really good songs on it. And then Five from 1998 was his big smash album, which if you look at it was never reviewed very well, did not chart particularly well, but stayed on the charts forever. I think I actually won him even 2 Grammys. So I always like to think of Bowie links when we can or we think about it. There is a great cover, but David Bowie's album Lodger, there's a song on that DJ that Lenny Kravitz covered in 2015, I think. If it's on Spotify, I'll put it on our Spotify music playlist in there with Tunnel Vision. If not, look it up on YouTube. It's a great performance of a very good David Bowie song. So thanks again to AO for sponsoring the podcast. Congratulations to Pluto for winning the second annual Sleep Unplugged pillow fight. You're going on the trophy. Red light therapy, play around with it. What do you think? What have you seen? Let us know. Dr. Chris Winter Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter Twitter, Dr. Chris Winter Blue Sky Threads. Find us in the podcast. Until next week, sleep well.